Yeah.
But there is, and I guess maybe we can kind of massage this into behind the keyboard. It, I was being empathetic before in expressing that there's some of these guys, they're young, they're kids, and all of a sudden it's done. I think the flip side of that is with the mindset of a professional athlete, like you talked about, Mike, you have to have kind of a insanity of overestimating your own importance. And like I've said before, like Devers is a great hitter. I I don't think he is like a once in a generation type hitter that we're gonna remember forever and ever. It's when I like talk to like kids nowadays, like talk about like players who, for me, like Nomar, even Manny
Yeah.
Ramirez, that they don't know who these guys are. And like these are like baseball fans. So like they know David Ortiz, right? And they know like Roger Clemens. But like there's a different tier. And I think that there's one of those things that players of Devers's caliber, players of Antonio Brown's caliber, I think they just kind of overestimate that this is always going to be here. Like I'm always going to be famous. People are always going to care about me. And it's like Antonio Brown, like you ain't Jerry Rice. Like like in a few years, people are going to forget who you are. Nobody's going to care anymore. And I know that doesn't really probably mean much to you, but it might mean something to your pocketbook when it's all said and done.
I have a slightly different variation of that same take that I was thinking about the other day, to the point where I was like, I wish somebody would pay me to write mindless essays about really random things that I've thought about. Because I was out for a run and like I've gotten into distance running, not anything crazy, but I've run a few half marathons and I'm like training for another one. And like I if you told me like go run 13 miles, or I will get the 13 done, but like within each mile, like there's this, it's so easy for your brain to just go somewhere else in like not in a good way. Like to perform at the highest level, you have to be so locked in so frequently, and like the amount of brain power and energy that that takes, I think is just impossible to comprehend. I was thinking about it as like a like this idea came to me while I was out for a run, but also thinking about like the PGA Tour and like that these guys just had to play 3 weeks in a row, play like 72 holes of competitive golf. Like again, golf is not the most taxing thing in the world, but to like stay that locked in and stay that focused without just being like, what am I gonna have for dinner tonight? Oops, I just pushed the ball into the bunker. Now my entire round is screwed. Like the same thing with baseball. It's to be locked in every single night takes an ungodly amount of discipline, attention, and energy that just like some guys either don't have or don't want to find. And like that's how I think you end up separating good from great and like the best from all time. So like I think that's part of it too, is that you just have to be willing to like keep your attention longer than other people and still be elite at the skill that you have. And like that's just not for everybody. And like as I get older, I start realizing that, where it's like, yeah, man, some days it's just easier to show up to work, punch in the clock, and then go home and sit and try. Like it's just another one of the days. And like those, the best don't have that. And like that's a hard thing to kind of to quantify and find, quite frankly.
Yeah. I mean, it's tough because I feel like it's easy for people to be like, well, if you make enough money, you should be able to focus. And it's like, there is a very human element to all of this that's like doing the same thing over and over and over again and not, when it's in the public eye. So, you know, I, I have a certain level of compassion. I mean, I guess to your point at the end there, Mike, take a look at Anthony Rendon. Like he's a good
Yeah.
example of like,
Yep.
as a guy who's just naturally talented, but you can tell he hates the game. And it, I I think it still falls in the same bucket of like, hey, there are probably lots of people who are accountants who make plenty of money and actually hate being accountants, but they're good enough at math that they do it. And it's like, it's all levels. It's harder to feel bad for Anthony Rendon getting a few $100 million contract, but it caught up to him. Like he got the deal and he's been useless with the Angels for years and years and years. And he makes clear that he seems miserable. So, it does reach critical mass at some point, but it's a lot easier when you've already gotten paid. Um, so yeah, I mean, I also, you know, I think this varies from sport to sport, and there's obviously a demographic angle to this too. But there are a lot of professional athletes who get to tune out of everything else so that they can focus singularly on sports. And in some cases, they have been able to do that their entire lives down to youth, and it just changes how it looks at a different point. And so that I think is where it's kind of like some people just aren't equipped to do anything else, so they can handle focusing on baseball entirely because that is the only thing they have been conditioned to do. And if that's the case, God bless them. As long as they're happy, that's what matters. But that's, it does get a little murky in some ways.
Yeah, I mean, Rendon's a good example because it's
Yeah.
like there are ways that as an athlete you can do it just for the money in like kind of an admirable way. Like I remember like Curtis Martin's Hall of Fame speech when he was like, "I just did this for the money," but he did it for the money in a way that like kept him motivated consistently, like so that he could not just get that big contract and quit, which I feel like Rendon has kind of done, and a lot of athletes have done, but to kind of continue like, okay, well now my mom is all set. Maybe I can make my sister all set. Maybe I can make my aunt all set. And there is like you do this to make money. Be totally honest. Like, why would you commit yourself to 15 or more years of putting your body through that if there wasn't a very lucrative reward that goes along with it? So it's not necessarily to say like, oh, this guy plays for the money. It's necessarily a bad thing. It's just it's being an adult about it and understanding that taking the job seriously and doing it responsibly is going to be important because you're still going to be a young man when your career is over. You're going to have a lot of life left, hopefully, in some people's cases.
You also like you talk about like doing it just for the money. Like professional athletes are lucky or fortunate in a way that like you can add value by things outside of your ability to throw a baseball or to shoot a jump shot. Like you can be a good teammate in a
Yes.
way that's valued far more, handsomely than like I'm going, like should I put that on my resume? Like people kind of like me who I worked with. Like that, you don't care about that if you're looking at a resume for a guy who's trying to get an editor job or like a content manager. Like that trait doesn't like that can get me fired if I'm not good at it, but it's not going to get me more money in a way that like professional athletes. Like that's what I like about some professional athletes. Like you see that in hockey a lot, right? Like this guy's main job, we're going to pay him far more handsomely than maybe the market says because he's a good teammate or can protect his teammates or whatever. Like I think there are other ways to like do it for the money without just being like, I just want to get my shots up or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I would say like ask Jason Kelsey if being nice to the media paid off. Ask JJ
Right.
Watt if being nice to the media paid off. Like it definitely paid off for them
Yeah.
in the long run.
Yeah.